Welcome to Gold Derby's roundtable panel on the making of the Peacock limited series, A Friend of the Family. I'm News and Features Editor Ray Richmond. Today, I'm privileged to be joined by costume designer Rebecca Gregg, production designer John D. Kretschmer, composer Ariel Marx, hair department head Katie Ballard, and makeup department head Karri Farris. Such a pleasure to have you all here today. Before we get started, I just wanted to describe for those unfamiliar with it what the 9-part A Friend of the Family is about. It reenacts the harrowing true tale of Jan Broberg, a Pocatello, Idaho girl who's systematically groomed by her next door neighbor, a charismatic master manipulator sociopath named Bob Birchtold. Birchtold kidnapped Jan twice, once when she was 12 and again at 14. And I'll never think of the term allergy pill the same way again. Most of what we see takes place in the mid-70s, and those period details are where your talents as craftspeople are brought to bear in telling the story. Let's start with your hair and makeup, Katie and Karri. You each had the rare opportunity to work alongside the woman at the center of this story, Jan Broberg, who is now 60 years old and served as an executive producer and collaborator on A Friend of the Family. Talk about how having Jan as a resource made a difference. First, you, Katie.
Yeah, it was a very unique experience having Jan on as a producer with us. The gift that we had from that was the fact that we had personal photos, a whole lot of, I know we had clothes, set dressing, props, and all of that from her. But the biggest thing for me was just making sure that when she was with our actors, she felt like she was with her family. And having her as a guest on the show was also incredibly unique. And that particular scene was special to us because Jan had the opportunity to, on camera, speak to her younger self, but also speak to Bob. And so the biggest compliment, I think, in my world was that she said she felt like she was in the room with her father. So that was a big hit for us. And that was the biggest thing for us, is just to make her feel like she was at home.
The hairstyles are so specific to the time and place, which I imagine meant lots of extensions to emulate that flip hairstyle worn by Jan's mother, Marianne Broberg, who's played by Anna Paquin in this show. Couldn't have been easy to create Colin Hanks' transformation into Jan's father, Bob, either, with that partially bald pate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was our biggest challenge for sure. I was very grateful to partner up with our incredible makeup department on that one. And when the challenge came to us, we had a few different ways we could go about it. So when I had my first chat with Colin, I told him, we have basically 3 different options. We could thin out his hair and use his hair, but it wouldn't look quite the same as Bob's. And the other option would be to do a bald cap. The trick with that is we were filming through the summer. So it would have meant a long time in the hair and makeup chairs, and also dealing with the summer heat, potentially it not looking as good as it could, and him just being hot underneath that and all of that. So the final option I came to, I told him was the most efficient and highest chance of success. And that was to shave the top of his head, and then color the rest of his hair to match Bob's. And then we used a really fine lace piece to create the illusion of balding. So we partnered with the makeup department to keep his head shaved very close. And then they put a layer of makeup to cover his natural stubble. And then we would apply the thin lace piece over the top of that each day, in addition to his color touch-ups that we did every 2 weeks.
Yeah, from some angles, even with the baldness, he looks exactly like his father. It's just eerie sometimes seeing Colin. Karri, so your makeup, you had to use a lot of your makeup to give the illusion of the baldness. Yeah. Were you literally recreating looks off of partial or actual photographs?
Yeah, we, again, we had the luxury of Jan to really be a reference and a resource of photos from, I could do like a progression of the kids from the time that they were, their first school picture until they graduated, and find tiny nuances that like kind of brought them all together when, there was the whole freckle thing. And so they all sort of had those, and we had maps made for them. And There was a point where Jan started wearing lip gloss. So then the sisters also wanted to wear lip gloss, and it was a very specific kind. So I found it, and we kind of incorporated that into their world at a certain point as well. So it was fun for the girls too, because they got to kind of pick out their own flavors and colors and that, and then, get to stand next to each other and next to their future selves and be like, this is me, and this is me younger, and this is amazing. And I know McKenna had fun finally having a younger version of herself. And as far as Bob went, once his head was shaved, it was like you shaving a face. Top of his head hasn't seen the day of light pretty much ever. So it was pale and had that sort of blue beard to it. So we did some tricks to keep him from sweating and to keep the makeup from moving. And, a couple layers of packs, a couple of layers of alcohol makeup, a whole lot of spatter painting just to turn him into Bob and have him have, sometimes he was a little more sunnier where he had been outside, and then we'd play him a little paler at times as well. Same with Birchtold. And then, again, Anna was sort of our own interpretation, and we went to Jan for tips and tricks about things about her mom that, like, she was always polished but never like overdone and things like that. So really finding those sweet spots to play.
And when you say McKenna, that's McKenna Grace,
Yes.
the older version of Jan that was in the show,
Yeah.
and who's incredible. All the acting is really just incredible performances. Karri, did you also research to find out exactly how women wore makeup, maybe appreciably differently in the 70s, or maybe something you just already know than they do today? Or did you already know?
We did research, again, having those pictures from her, because she didn't just have family photos, she had their entire community. So we had churchgoers, we had people from the flower shop that visited regularly, youth pastors. And so we really got to get a feel of what their community was, because it's very different from, say, the East Coast to the West Coast. It's not the height of fashion in Pocatello.
Right.
So really finding that spot and being, a little dated and still sticking with the, good housekeeping sort of feel about things versus, Vogue or anything else that was really coastal, which helped us sort of keep her look in that, a little restrained. And it might be, if you look at it, you're like, oh, it might be a little less 70s on the family from what our brains make us think. And it's not until we start venturing out into the cities, we got to get a little bit bigger with, our people that lived like on the coast or even in the bigger cities. Was it Salt Lake City? Is it Salt Lake City we went to? Trying to think of, we went to a lot of cities, but as each city got a little bit bigger, our looks sort of got a little bit more, honed into what the idea of that time was.
A little more cosmopolitan rather than
yeah. And
sheltered.
When we did, we all worked together. Rebecca establishing those costumes helps us see them as well. Like, how modern are we going with these people? And then we can move forward from there. So we develop a cohesive sort of look for our characters. And it's not just like, oh, well, this one has this and this and this and this, but she's wearing like this dowdy dress and she's like sweeping a porch. We made sure that we all worked together to make a cohesive look for our Pocatello people.
Speaking of you, Rebecca, working as a costume designer on this project had to be a huge amount of fun. Oh my God, did Jan go through pictures with you too that showed off her childhood wardrobe?
It was more, we were literally given like a treasure trove, all of us. It was I would say like thousands of photos and slides. Just, we were gifted this kind of decades long, I would say from the 50s to the 80s of family photos. But there was a definite gap of photos that was the years that Jan was missing, that we had to kind of fill in the gaps of those years ourselves. But we did have the historical documents to pull from, and that was really incredibly helpful. And then Jan came also to visit us, and we got to spend, she came to the costume house, and I got to spend hours with her, just kind of getting to know her. We'd Zoomed and we spoke on the phone, and then she came and wandered through this, collection of costumes that I was putting together, and we talked about her story, and I showed her some of the ideas that I had for costumes for the pilot, and she was just enamored and excited and was like blown away with what we were doing. And like we has already been spoken, she felt like she was reliving, and she felt, we all really wanted it to be, of course, authentic, and she felt like it was her story, and she was so she felt taken care of. And I think that was just the most important thing for all of us, that we were really telling the truth about what happened. And we all just wanted her story to be told as honestly as possible. So yes to all of that. And then, we do take, as a designer, we take tiny liberties here and there, because it's like, we don't have the actual garments. And so, or we need like multiples of things. And also, we have actors playing these people, or we don't have the actual things. So, like her father's apron, for example, like we had an older version, and then we had photos of a jacket that he used to wear in the 60s. So my team and I made a different colored apron than what we had from the 80s. And we made a different colored jacket because it just looked better on Bob than what he actually wore, on Colin, than what Bob wore. And it looked better in the set, right? That John and his team put together. It just really worked better on the skin tone and his hair and everything. So, we take magical liberties with what we do.
As you always have to.
Yeah, right. And it worked really well, I think, with the gorgeous set that was built, and the makeup and the hair and everything. So,
So unbelievable to have the victim of a true crime drama there by your side as a collaborator. It's so unbelievable.
It's wild.
Yeah,
and she did have, I think it was Katie who just mentioned that we did have some of the clothes, and it's wild because Jan is an actress, right? So, and she has a theater company, and she sent this, we did the Golden Green Ball, and she sent her mother's gown that she wore to the Golden Green Ball. And I actually tried it on Anna, and we were hoping for her to actually wear it, but it didn't work out. But I do have pictures of that. It was like amazing. We ended up making a gown that was really similar, but just worked better for the set and for everyone, and for camera and everything. But it was amazing to have that piece.
The clothes were so quintessentially 70s in the show. The greens and the aquas and the yellows and the browns and paisley and denim. Bob was, the short sleeves and pocket protector kind of nerd wear, and then Berchtold was the sort of cowboy chic, and the dresses sensible and conservative. It was just you really told a story with the clothes.
Yeah, and there were, and we went from 72 to 78, and there was a real journey, and it wasn't coastal living, right? Like it was Pocatello, Idaho, and we were dealing with our Mormon family and families, but they were also a little fashion forward, but not wildly, right? And then we have Bob Berchtold, who really was living a fantasy. This really messed up human being who was had a lot.
That's pretty clear in the show.
Right, very clear in the show. But every new personality that he took on, he believed that he was like Steve McQueen in a way, right? Katie and, and Carrie,
Oh, yeah.
like that was his.
Yeah.
He like had this idea that he was like the cool cat on the scene doing things, and he had a whole town wrapped around his finger. And he was like the fun, cool guy, but was just a psychopath. And, you know, a sex addict and just gross, but came across so warm and skeevy, like all the things. And but we wanted to like him and we wanted the audience to like him. It was like such a nuanced thing for us. And then there were also things like we didn't want the mom to be too dressed up at home. So there was like a thing for Marianne where there were like, you could see when she went out, she looked nicer than, but at home she was casual. Like there were all these things that we did with the clothes. And just the kids, like it was really fun to source all that stuff, but it was also challenging. There were something like 11 other 70s shows going on at the same time. And being in Atlanta, it was like it was a challenge. I would say we all had some challenges, but every show is a challenge. And I had the best team working with me. You know, I was really, really lucky. And I love what I do. But we had so many costumes. Oh my gosh. When you watch it and you're like, they're changing again. And, you know, as always, it didn't always make it in the cut, but the sets were gorgeous and they really held my clothes against them beautifully, I would say.
Speaking of the sets, that's a perfect transition to John. Thank you. John, your production design is exquisite in this show. Was there any specific template you were trying to model it off of? I mean, the Broberg home or the town exteriors?
Well, again, we had the great blessing of knowing exactly what the real thing was. We had it both documented in the documentary. We had it in the family archives. That was our blessing. Our challenge was shooting Atlanta for Pocatello and the American Southwest. However, and I think Nick from the get-go wanted to err towards documentary. We know the real thing. Let's try to be the real thing. And then I think my job as a designer, our job in the art department was to interpret it, you know, to take the facts and make it a narrative, both out of need and just out of its better storytelling. So the blessing is we knew exactly what it was. And then we had to recreate that in Atlanta. And I tell you, Atlanta is a city in a forest on a hill, which is very different from Pocatello. It took quite a bit of time to find a good swath of 60s era houses to match. But lo and behold, after about 1,000 miles of scouting, we found probably the only house that may exist on the planet that we could actually duplicate the Broberg house to a T. It was an unoccupied house. It was at a right setting that would help us feel like we're at least close to Idaho. And it was a house that we could renovate to actually match the Broberg house exactly. And with that, we were able to match the floor plan on the inside, which is very important because the house was, Birchtold did exploit the house and the architecture, the layout, the basement, you know, for his gain. In terms of the style and color, again, we knew exactly what the real thing was. So we just took it and interpreted it, working with the team to come up with the best colors and ideas that sell the era, sell Pocatello, and sell this family story.
There seems to kind of be an overall look, John, that fairly screams, 1970s innocence, which I'm guessing was intentional. It kind of starts out sort of like Pleasantville and grows more sinister as we go along. Was that something you were mindful of, or maybe that's just what the audience brings to it? I don't know. Is that intentional?
Along with Celiana, our cinematographer, that was very much the idea that we're going to start in light and we're going to head towards shadow as the story progresses. I think our goal and our mandate really in design was not to be too special. We really want to make these houses feel lived in, feel genuine. I think overall, our goal was to be authentic and be visually interesting, but more than anything, be authentic. And that's what we really strove to achieve throughout the story.
Ariel Marx, I haven't forgotten about you. Your music adds such a dynamic and essential element to this mix. What sort of mood were you looking to establish with the score, both that you created and that you acquired for the production?
Well, so I have to say it's so amazing to see and hear all of you, because I know you exist, but I haven't met you before, and your work so much inspires mine. So it's wonderful to hear you talk. The process of the score was very much about not staying ahead of the action and being very much in Jan's point of view and the Broberg's point of view in terms of how slowly over time he had groomed the entire family. So the music never, a true guiding principle was it was never saying more about B than we kind of already, than what they could see, unless we're alone with him. And then that's where, you know, it's the layers are peeled off when we see who he is. But you know, there's a lot of needle drops and iconic needle drops, and they had an amazing music supervising team. But the score very intentionally wasn't meant to be 70s based. It was just, it's meant to feel kind of timeless. And it was a really neat project because of all of, you know, there's Jan's innocence and her, this fairy tale view of companionship and marriage and life and friendship. And that was like a very dreamy, organic palette. And then what was so interesting and heartbreaking, of course, is the whole science fiction aspect of it. And so I was able to get quite weird and menacing as that slowly became more and more present with the show. And then, you know, each episode is so different, especially in terms of like levels of awareness of who B is and levels of maturity, and also like dynamics in the family. And so kind of very uniquely, you couldn't just like drag and drop cues from older episodes into newer episodes. The music really did have to evolve into something a bit more sobering. By the end, by the final episode, it's a really different palette. You know, Jan has grown up. She can see through B's manipulations, and the music does become a bit more grounded, less fairy tale like, a bit more sobering and sparse and mature. And also like the whole, like everyone is saying this series did such a great job of not being sensational, like not sensationalizing it, being very honest. And so that was always something I had to keep in check of, you know, trying to stay away from melodrama as much as possible. Yeah,
no, I think everybody did an amazing job of keeping that under control. So it isn't, you know, overly dramatic and, manipulative. In terms of the music, though, Ariel, I also love the song choices that kind of envelop the moments. You know, they acquired stuff like Linda Ronstadt's Heat Wave, and the Partridge Family's Come On, Get Happy, and the Captain Tennille, and I Want You to Want Me, and oh my God, it just took me back. I know that it wasn't supposed to just be the 70s, but it really encapsulated that era beautifully.
It did. And again, I can't take credit for any of that. The music supervision team and Nick and Alex, they had so much heart into choosing music. And then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Jan and her family also sent what they were listening to at the time. So these songs actually meant something to the Broberg family as well.
Let me just tell you all that I was simultaneously creeped out and completely wowed by this series. I mean, you all do such a superb job in recreating the essence and style of that period in general, and this twisted story in particular, you know, sort of the Partridge Family and the Brady Bunch on steroids or acid. How long did this shoot go on? It seems like it would have taken a good while. There was so detailed. Did this go on for? It looks like it went on for 6 or 8 months. Is that accurate?
Longer than that, wasn't it?
Is that right?
Well, we had a lot of COVID delays, so I think we extended almost 30 days over our original schedule.
It was longer than that, but yeah, I think it was 8 months.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think I was in Atlanta for 9 months total, so I think that's about 7, 8 months feels right. For
So
filming.
COVID really played a part in the length and keeping this thing going.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. How much did it help to have the 2017 Netflix doc about the case, Abducted in Plain Sight, to draw inspiration from?
I used it as a litmus test, even for people that I was bringing on to the crew. Watch this, make sure you're ready to tell this story, because that is such a gut punch of a topic. And sign on, we're going to do it right. We need to treat it well. But it was an amazing resource to have for the art department, no doubt.
I definitely sent people to watch it, or at least asked them if they had seen it before I, brought them on. A lot of people wanted to work and they heard 70s and they were like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, well, do you know what this is about? Did you see this documentary? Maybe you should watch it if you haven't. This is a very sensitive topic, and I don't want you to I don't want anybody to get freaked out or have any problems while we're filming as well. So, it helped as far as that. And I know I heard of the story because of that. And then some other true crime podcasts I was listening to. And then I was just like, I can't believe I'm on this show. And oh my gosh, there's so much information in this Dropbox. I can't even sift through it all. It was insane.
It was nice just to see also the people working with us and the viewers connected to the real people that we were recreating. Because just beginning on the project, I'd kind of mentioned the documentary to people, and I was shocked at how many people had seen it and were moved to great lengths by the story. And everyone was already deeply attached to the people involved. And that was extra motivation, I think, for us to make sure that we really hit the nail on the head when we were recreating their characters.
Yeah, I agree. I hadn't seen it until I met with the guys. I watched it before I met with them, but I hadn't seen it, or I'd seen it on Netflix, but I'd not watched it. And then it was a great resource. And along with that we had a Dropbox with all the court documents. And then, that's where we kept all of our photos. And, the team of writers had worked on the project for over a year and just had so many resources, which is, the amount of work that went into this project. So it's really amazing. Thank you so much for what you just said to all of us, by the way, because we all put our heart and souls into this, I would say, which is, I've worked on a lot of shows and it's not always the case. And I would say that all of us worked our tails off and really were so true to the story and really worked so hard to be authentic with the story. And having Jan and her family involved really means a lot as well, because I know that there are a lot of mockumentaries, I don't know, that aren't true to their to the shows that are about real people. And so having them involved really, I think, made it that much more important for all of us. But having people be like, oh, the 70s. And it was always like, yeah, this is this is a hard one. It's not always full of joy. There's the work is really challenging at times, and then add COVID and the layers of what we're actually, the story we're telling, it's a challenging story to tell. So I think,
I also think we all learned that it's a story that needs to be told. And I think one of the lessons I learned, our team, is that, the danger is not the scary dark shadow in the alley. The danger is the one you may love the most or that's closest to you. And I think ultimately that was the reason of our endeavor.
And the impetus for Jan and her family, really, you know, she really wanted us to tell this story in her way. And that's why Nick and Alex wanted to do this story in a narrative way as well.
It's just so unusual to have, you know, a survivor of a story like this who wasn't killed, wasn't, you know, so damaged by it that she wasn't able to function well throughout her life, that came out as well and had a normal life as Jan did. I don't think I can recall a similar story and a similar narrative like that.
But I wouldn't say that she wasn't damaged. I would actually reframe that and say that she has healed through the damage.
Yeah,
you know, I would
fair.
actually say that she was damaged and the family was damaged and that they went through a major healing process and now are sharing that healing. And like Jan's real gift is to like heal other people through their trauma, you know, and that's like her goal in life. And this is part of that healing.
It's so clear how seriously, as you just mentioned, that you all took your jobs. The details are just so exquisitely done, you know, as I've mentioned. It really is beautifully done, and this deserves awards attention, this show. But in terms of Jan being there, and I don't mean to go back to that too much, but was it ever weird or uncomfortable having the grown-up version of your story's victim on the set with you there by your side?
You know, it was one night her mom was there, and it was really intense to see her watching, you know, I would say it was really intense to watch the scene with like Marianne and Bob and Bob Berchtold. But I'm like, wait, no, his name was Bob.
I know they're both Bobs.
They were all Bob. Everyone's name was Bob.
That's right.
In the motorhome. That was intense. It was intense.
Yeah, I think that was the only day where I was, and it was the first day I had seen them both on set, and I was just like, I don't know what to do for a minute. Like I froze. And they were there, and her son was there, and they're very warm, welcoming, and amazing people. Like, you couldn't have asked for a more inviting group of people, but at the same time, you're still like, oh God, are we doing it okay? Are we doing you justice? Are we being respectful? And though we always felt like that, you never knew, you don't know what another person is thinking. So it really wasn't until we got to see her the next time that I got to talk to her a little bit, and just, you know, again, she reiterated like that whole, you know, you have my blessing and that sort of thing that made me feel a little bit better. And that was something that she definitely made sure that we knew that she wanted this told, and she wanted us to do her story justice and tell it truthfully. And you know, sometimes you just need to be reminded that like you are doing this is a good thing. We can still do good things in our world. And you know, but there was that moment of the generations.
But oh my God, the value of having her there. I mean, just the little touches. I'm imagining all of you, you know, to have, you know, just the way Marianne always answered the phone, Broberg's. I'm imagining that had to be something Jan said she always did or whatever. Or, I mean, I know you also had Marianne probably consulting a little bit as well, since she's still around, but all those touches really made a difference.
There's some very minuscule details in the set decoration and stuff that came straight from Jan. More than anything, she was an inspiration to us. Always welcome to the collaborative process, and she kind of, you know, kept the wind in the sails when she's involved. But there's countless very small details that are genuine to the story, and thanks to her input and the family's input.
I'll echo what John said too. I think we all were nervous and felt some pressure to make sure that we were living up to the story and making sure that everyone felt comfortable and at home. And with Jan, I think there's just such a close-knit family that she was just excited to see her childhood home and to see her family again. And that really kept us all going. And she also was able to bring additional detail to every element because of that. So it really was, in my opinion, something that enhanced the whole experience.
We're going to wrap up here in a couple minutes, all of you. I just wanted to ask you each how you all feel about the finished product and how it all came together. If this is something you're going to put at the top of your resume from here. Let's start with you, Katie.
Oh, definitely. We had so many initially challenges, but at the end of the day, just exciting things that we were able to accomplish. And with the addition of things like COVID and working through the heat in Atlanta and all of that, I think that we really brought together something that is incredible. And we told a story that is unbelievable and unique. And we were so lucky to work with such an incredible cast and to have the opportunity to do the things that we were able to do.
Yeah, not just Anna and Colin, but Jake Lacey as Birchtold, or B as he's called. Hendrix Yancey as the younger Jan is also terrific. And of course, McKenna Grace, amazing. Such great, vivid character work. Karri, what's your feeling about the finished product?
Oh, it was beautiful. I couldn't wait, to watch the next episode. And I never had a, huge chunk of time to sit there and just plow through them all. So it was like bits and pieces. And I was like, I have 30 minutes, I can do it. And I'd start watching. I was like, I don't want to turn it off, but I got to go. And I don't want to turn it off. But it turned out so beautiful. And it's always going to give me like that little bit of nostalgia of the family that we made, telling this story together. I think that we really became intertwined in each other's worlds and became a family in our own way. And I think it really is special. It's one of those projects that sort of lives with you.
Rebecca, how about you?
Yeah, this body of work that we all made together is incredibly special. And it's, even just trying to choose an episode for any submission is really challenging, honestly, because it's the efforts that we made to tell this story are so incredibly large. It's like to choose one feels it's like, how do you choose your favorite child? You know what I mean? Honestly. So I think as a whole, it speaks for itself. So I'm really proud of the work that we all did together. But when we were in it, it was really tough to say that it was, what we were doing. I was like, is anybody going to watch this? Because it's really heavy. It's really heavy. And what we made is I'm really proud of it. And I'm really glad that we made it. And I really hope that people watch it because it's a beautiful, really special story. So, yeah.
I agree. John, how's your
I think I'm most proud that the collaborative effort, I'll go back to authenticity. With the era of the 70s, it can easily become too stylish, that the art supersedes the story. But I think the whole effort, including the performances and all the way to the cut, that we told the story as genuinely as possible. And that's what I'm most proud of.
And Ariel, how about you?
So, I of course came at it down at the end of the line, and very early on, there was that opening scene with Jan, the real Jan, saying, this is my story, this really happened. And for me, I think that was so powerful in terms of giving you permission to watch it. And so that really did give me permission to, and also, faith to hang tight. Where this is going to be okay. We're going to take you through a difficult story, but I'm here and we're going to wrap it up respectfully. So I thought it was just so well done in every way. I feel all of your passion and see all of your passion in the cuts. I I love that there was just really no template for this. Like it's such an amalgam of genre. And I also wasn't pointed in any specific direction. Like I really did have a blank slate with it. So I think it was just a wonderful, like starting from scratch, not trying to be anything else but bespoke to what it is. So very proud of it.
You know what I'm just going to add before we wrap. I appreciated that the story was told from the perspective of a female victim rather than the sick POV of the male perpetrator. That had to be a purposeful choice. And I think it was one that was extra powerful because of that was what you went with. We're going to wrap here. Rebecca Gregg, John D. Kretschmer, Ariel Marx, Katie Ballard, and Karri Farris. What incredible work you all did on A Friend of the Family. The 9-part series is streaming on Peacock. Best of luck to all of you at this year's Emmys. Any attention you receive would be so well deserved. Thanks for joining us at Gold Derby today, and take good care.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ray.
Bye.